federal 14th Amendment. He has helped Americans from around the world eliminate their income tax liability through his passport process. His state citizenship work has been accepted by governments all over America, including the New Hampshire State Department, the New Hampshire Department of Motor Vehicles, and the New Hampshire Superior Court. Christopher teaches state citizenship classes online at destinationfreedom.org and helps people eliminate various forms of debt, including dealing with the IRS and setting up foreign trust organizations. Destinationfreedom.org is a website and community of freedom-minded Americans who have eliminated their federal and state income tax liability. So would you join me in welcoming Christopher this morning?
Thanks so much for being here. I'm glad to be a part of that. If you wouldn't mind taking your conversations outside, that'd be great, so I don't have to talk over here. I appreciate it. I'll use the microphone here. I'm just going to cover some of the foundation stuff that I have in our state citizenship class that we have online. It's available at your leisure in that sense. At 11 o'clock, I'm going to be down at the exit lounge, and I'm going to go over state versus federal citizenship and what that is, talking about the two citizens. But right now, I just want to give some background about the states and how they came to be, and dealing with the Declaration of Independence, which I don't think of the Constitution. I don't have a romantic feeling about, certainly not the federal Constitution. Why is that? It's because I'm not a federalist. I'm not a union guy at this point. Maybe at some point our federal government was a whiz-bang idea, but I think even from its beginning, it began in corruption because James Madison, the father of the Constitution, he had to trick George Washington into supporting this new form of government they wanted to have, even though the colonies already had a government and they already had a convention, but Madison came in and usurped that convention's intentions and wanted to set up a central government. And in that class of in that workshop over there, I'll talk a little bit about the power that the federal government has. Okay? But I want to just deal with the Declaration of Independence. I don't think of political things as sacred, if you will, but the Declaration of Independence is a powerful document, and it's not just for America. It is a world document. Take a look at the opening of the Declaration of Independence. Now, this was unanimous with those original colonies when they broke away from their government that they had at the time. It says, when in course of human events. So right off, it's talking about human events. It's not talking about America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitled them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. This is a beautiful opening, and the right that's being declared here is your right to disassociate with people. There is no right of association. Why is that? Because it requires someone else. Association with others is a privilege. You have to get agreement. We get restraining orders on people who want to be with people against their will, And so this idea, and certainly coming from the bad history associated with the Civil War, the South walked out by vote and by their choice, okay? And that is their right to disassociate, as it says here in the Declaration of Independence. Now, that right isn't created by this declaration here. It was a truth that was understood. In order to become a part of the Union, not only would you vote, or you'd be a body of people that wanted to come into the Union by, if you will, a vote in that sense, but you have to have the agreement of the other colonies or the other states. They have to agree. So their reps, this is why it has to be by permission of Congress, because those other reps have to say, yes, you can now associate with us. It's not a right. No other country in America can come in because they want to be there. Okay? So the right to disassociate is important. Now, there's a lot of people, freedom-minded people, who think that they can travel the world and be welcome everywhere. There's no such thing as that. You don't have a right to be anywhere you want with other people. They have a right to choose whether they want you to be there. And that's a benefit of borders, okay? And so there are people that think that the world should be borderless. Well, then we'll all encamp in your property and sit outside your property because, we don't care about borders. Borders made up of you or individuals is a good thing. Fences made up by make good neighbors. Fences made up by governments usually are bad. And they're designed not to they're pretended like we're going to keep someone out, all the while it's going to keep you in. So that's the problem when governments are creating walls or borders. But people have a right to say, we want to be with these kind of people or not those kind of people. So this is that right to disassociate. Then it goes on to say, we hold these truths to be self-evident. And let me tell you, today, truth is being attacked. Even your ability to determine whether something is true. And you can see that online, where especially with this AI crap, where you're going to be saying, I'm looking at something and I can't determine whether it's true or not. That's why video is not acceptable in court as testimony. Because you can have video these days, especially with technology, you can't tell if their lips are moving, what it is that you're hearing, so video is terrible. Unless you had an expert say, this is certified as being original or whatever, without that, there's no way for you to determine whether something is true or not. But back then he says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Now this men is referring to mankind, are created equal. That they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Now look at how powerful this is. They're talking about everyone, all men are created and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these, there are others, among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now look at this. Here's the only purpose of government. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. That is the only purpose of government. That is the only purpose of a just government, is to secure rights. It doesn't make out rights. Civil rights are not rights. Civil rights are privileges. And just because you call a privilege a right doesn't make it a right. Rights, which is a spiritual concept, it's short for righteousness, that relationship with the divine. That's what rights are, and they come from the Creator. Everyone has the same rights. Nobody has different rights. Everyone, men and women, have the same rights. There's no such thing as group rights. There's no such thing as gay rights. There's no such thing as women's rights. There's no such thing as men. None of these groups are rights. The individual is the only one that has rights, and everyone has the same. If you want privacy, everyone has right to privacy. And that's how rights work. And then it says that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, here's another right, it's a right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Have they talked about themselves yet? No. They're just talking about these principles of relationships or political relationships between government and people. This is still open talking to the whole world. If I was living in another country and I was wanting to promote freedom, I would use this as a foundation of truth. It goes on to say, prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown, and this is amazing, all these men that were in this room, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. And I see that like TSA or any kind of encroachment. It's not too bad. And yet there's another encroachment. And that's the way the communists always move. They take 2 steps forward and you're like, oh no, this is bad. And they take 1 step back. And then they take 2 steps forward and they take 1 step back. Liberty doesn't usually move that way. That it takes 2 steps forward and then says, oh yeah, it's too free, let's take 1 step. That doesn't work that way. Usually liberty or freedom requires vigilance to say no, we're not going to encroach here, not even in the littlest. Should government be involved in charity? No. Because when you think of government, you should always think of the word force. And listen, force isn't a bad thing for government. Because if they were only securing rights and the consequence of violating your individual rights, all freedom or liberty is backed by force, ultimately, So it says, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evidences a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government to provide new guards for their future security. You see, look at there, a lot of times people don't recognize what your duty is. It's one thing that you are interested in making sure your rights are secure. It's a greater maturity to be concerned with and make sure that others' rights are not violated as well. And some of that, when we live in community with each other, that is also our duty, to be vigilant to make sure your neighbor's rights are not being violated as well. You know, and rights requires self-government. The best way to make sure government doesn't encroach is self-government. You imposing your own limitations to walk in love or be with other people. That's an important element of keeping liberty and freedom. That's one of the things I like about PorcFest. I realize how much I love being with people, and they suck. You know, I have to deal with, get my head wrapped around. I'm like, listen, when I go camping in the woods, I want to hear crickets. I don't want to hear bad karaoke, okay? But this is my family. This is where you're like, oh man, this is stretching my ability to get along with others well, you know. But hey, that's the way it is, and I keep coming back because there's a beauty in that. You know, I remember being in a class one time. It was a Bible class one time. And I'm sitting there and trying to gain the great deep spiritual intent. And I remember sitting there and we're watching these home movies, these old movies of the ministry and how it began. And I'm watching, I'm like, oh man, this is boring as hell. If you're watching other people's home movies, you're like, what the hell is this? Like, you never ever invite friends over to watch home movies because it's not anything. It's like, oh my God, this is stretching the limits of, and I was struggling there looking at these old home movies. Then I realized that these people that I may not know are my family. So it changed and shifted in me, realizing that these are the people that I'm committed to. The human element can you imagine how God feels? Listen, God has family fucked up problems too, you know. I mean, take a look at the people all around. But you see, that there's a beauty in the messiness of relationship. And let me tell you something. Maturity, scripturally, maturity is based upon your ability to love the unlovely or those that are not so good. That's when you know that you love. It's very easy to love lovely people. It requires nothing of me. But those that are around me that I don't like the way they look, I don't like the way they behave, their kids are too loud, you know, listen, I have a dog that barks at every person. I'll bring them to PorcFest so they can bark. I mean, like, this is the way it is, you know, and when you're dealing with family members, it's like, I'm okay that they came, but did they have to bring their kids or their dogs and all? But hey, this is the way it's playing out. So, it goes on to say, talking about this, when a long train of usurpation, such has been the patient sufferings of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations. Usurpations are like an overthrow or a misapplied authority. Okay, usurpation. All having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. And so this is the opening of the Declaration of Independence. And now, they just now specifically are getting into their grievances. And then there's a whole list of grievances. Now, I've looked over those grievances over the years, you know, and I'm of the opinion that those grievances aren't so bad. Because people back then would not dare encroach upon your family or your living or whatever it is or what was yours and all that stuff. They didn't go that far. And listen, back then, it was a rough world. I mean, if you were violating someone, you didn't call 911 and let the cops, or you just said, I'm going to defend my property, whatever. And you may make a mistake, but the guy will end up dead. You know, it's a kinder community that's an armed community, you know. So, anyway, but there's grievances there. And it's worth the exercise to look at them, understand what the grievances are, and how they play out into what we have today, or what would be grievances that we might have today. So after those grievances, it said, in every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. I remember the IRS back when I was part of We the People, and so they were going to do the truth and taxation hearing. They wanted the IRS and the government to answer questions about the income tax and how that played out. And so 9/11 showed up shortly after that, and they did this hearings, and the congressman that said they were going to show didn't show, and the IRS didn't show, and they're like, wow. So they got a petition together to present to the Supreme Court to have the Congress answer questions about the income tax. Well, the Supreme Court came back and said, yes, you have a right to redress, but the Congress has no obligation to answer your grievances. That's what he said. Now, in the next class down there, I'm going to share why they don't have that obligation. The Supreme Court was right. These people don't have, which are federal citizens, they don't have, the representatives don't have an obligation to answer their grievances. But you see, and the IRS told them, we're going to answer your grievances by enforcement. So literally the IRS was doing exactly what the king and the British Crown was doing at that time. Goes on to say, we have repeated petitions of answer with repeated injury. A prince, now watch this is an important thing to recognize from here. A prince, they're talking about the king, the prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Now, a lot of libertarian people, anarchists, ignorantly think that they're talking about that it doesn't make sense that you could have a ruler over a free people, because you don't know what that word ruler means. You think ruler is like a ruling over, okay? The context of here, remember, is the standard. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act is unfit to be the ruler. A ruler is a unit of measurement. That's what it is. And when we're talking about character, the king was unfit in his character to be a standard for a free people. That's what that means. So it's not ruling over the people. There's nothing wrong with a king as a government if the king was moral. If the king was fierce to make sure you as an individual, your rights would never be violated. So a benevolent dictator isn't necessarily bad, but it depends upon the morality of that king or that office, if you will. And a divinely appointed king, if you will, if he was moral, and certainly if he was fierce that your rights would never be violated, then that would be a good thing. Now, the founders knew that putting all that power into one man or one woman is a problem. And so that's why they came up with separating that power into different branches of government. How's that working for us today? The separation of powers. Is that checking off? Okay, right. It's not, okay? And one of the indications that you can see that it's not working very well is you have a Supreme Court, right? Now, the Supreme Court, they all take an oath to uphold the Constitution, right? Against enemies, foreign and domestic, right? How many Supreme Court justices have ever read the Constitution? Now, we can probably guess they may have, okay? But what's going on then? Now, do they have different interpretations of the Constitution? I would imagine. So when you have a 5-4 decision by the Supreme Court, what's going on there? Which ones don't understand the Constitution or are not upholding it? Something's got to be up, right? Because you can't have these high offices and say they understand the Constitution when you can have men come together, men and women, and say, oh, we think this is constitutional. Oh, this is not constitutional. What's up? Because if you don't have a recourse and say to the Supreme Court, it has to be unanimous. If it isn't unanimous, we're going to impeach somebody. Because you're going to either be unanimous or we're going to impeach you. And there's no other. Because if the people don't understand the Constitution and its limitations, do you think your representatives are going to understand it? And if the deep state or whoever it is taking over law schools, do you think that attorneys are going to understand your rights and how to secure them? Attorneys know enough about your rights like doctors know how your body works. Not really working very well, is it? So that's what's happening here. But the idea of this is that the king's character was not fit to be the ruler of a free people, nor have we been wanting in our attention to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time by attempts by their legislature to extend, here it is, an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. And I'll show you in this talk later on how federal jurisdiction and what the limitations of that and how that's happening for people today. They don't realize that you're choosing to be in federal jurisdiction and you don't even know it. So that's the same thing that were happening. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. Even their legislature it says they too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind in enemies in war, in peace, friends. These people, these colonies, were making this declaration to the crown. Must have gone over real well. Then it goes and finishes up there. It says, we therefore, the representative of the United States of America, and if you read the original declaration, it is a small u. It's just there happened to be united. It's not that they are, the colonies were the states of America. In general, Congress assembled, appealing to the supreme judge of the world. You see, if your rep isn't concerned about the rights violations going on in your life, the rep is ignorant of the intention of government, or a just government, is to secure rights. That's why when I talk to the sheriff, when they're running for office, I say, so, what do you think the number one rights violations going on in the county is? They're like, what? It's like one of them said, like, are you meaning whether law enforcement is harming people and all that? Oh, okay, maybe that's what you feel it is. So, because my next question is, what are you doing about it? I had one sheriff say that foreclosures and taking people's property from the banks, that's great. And again, what are you going to do about it? And so that probably would be some of the number one work that I would do in New Hampshire, that I think that all freedom organizations should do, is to secure. There's only 10 seats in New Hampshire of sheriffs, and if we have constitutional sheriffs that are making sure that in the county no rights are being violated, that's force. That would be an important step. It's only 10 elections every county, and imagine all the freedom people in each county were making sure that there would be a constitutional sheriff. I remember one time Sheriff Chris Conley in Conway, it was in what's that county? That's where Wolfboro is, Carroll County. And so he was a constitutional sheriff. I remember him interrupting the marshal's office from submitting papers that were unsigned by the court, and he sent them back to the court. So it was a powerful, strong office. If we want to get, that's, in my opinion, one of the most important elections in the state is our counties. And the other work that I think every freedom-minded organization should be a part of, and that is the fully informed jury. We must make sure that you cannot convene a jury without having a freedom-minded, knowledgeable, freedom-minded person on every jury that's not only going to judge the case, but the law. That is an end run for bad legislation. And so that is, in my opinion, one of the most important works that should be done for freedom in New Hampshire. So it goes on to say, look at the attitude of these reps. Appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intention, do in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies. And then look at this. They solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of a right, ought to be, free and independent states, that they're absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. If it's okay with you. I mean, this is, the language of this is powerful. I was down here at the big pavilion, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, where they had the exit communities there. They had the president from Exit California and Exit Texas, and then we had our exit people there too. And they're all about exiting, And they're having a conversation about how much of the debt should we be divided up among ourselves. And I was going to get them stand and ask questions like, have you guys read the Declaration of Independence? Did you see the founders saying like, but listen, King, we're really concerned about the budget. And so we're gonna make sure that you're not really harmed by the financial issue here. How many here in the room voted to increase the debt? Or to empower the central bankers? Anybody that? You know? I'm a big fan of absolving all the college kids of their debt. But who the fuck is saying that the answer is the American people take it on? How about let's screw bankers? That would be much better. Because I mean, what the hell do they bring to the table anyway, except this environment? So I mean, how come that's never the thing? You know, it's like, oh, the American people are gonna bail out this. It's like, yeah, if I was in charge, I'd say like, listen, if you have a mortgage on a property, it's now yours. Imagine that boost of the economy. It's like, yeah, we're eliminating central bankers and we're now going to decentral bankers. So whatever existing loans you have, they're all yours now. Good luck. And when are the bankers liable for their choices of who they're going to, extend debt to? And then what's the moral standard by, let's see, we have these young whippersnappers in college, and so let's see how much debt we can get them into before they even begin their careers. What parents are saying that's a good idea? This is a problem. But this is where people are. So they're here to saying that the relationship between the Great Britain is totally dissolved. And that's how you walk out. And are they asking the crown if it's okay? No. They're saying, here's what we're doing. We're leaving, okay? And if you want to see us, we'll see you in the village green. We're not asking if it's okay. We are leaving. That's why exile is a good form of punishment, because it just says, go away from me. Go and be by yourself or with the community that will accept you, but I don't want you to be with me. Leave me alone. And that's exactly what they were doing. So, listen to this. This is beautiful. We're talking about the colonies becoming states, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts which independent states may have right to. And the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Where are these people today that would stake your life and your fortune and your sacred honor on your liberty and freedom? You know what? So with respect to leaving the Union, okay, it'll never happen, okay? I'm just telling you it'll never happen. And the reason it'll never happen is we don't have the morality we don't have the responsibility in people to actually separate. Because here's the first thing. I reach out to Joe Kenny. He's on the executive council, all right? I called him up, and listen, you should know who your state rep is. You should meet with them, and they should know that you're a resource for understanding liberty and freedom. If you don't know your state rep, then there's someone alleging they represent you, and you don't know whether they're representing you or not. Now, I know state reps that represent my freedom issues, and I don't elect them, but I would finance their campaign, okay? But if you don't know whether your rep is a freedom-minded person, you should let them know that it's not okay, and that you're going to do something to defend your liberty. We have to stop practicing democracy. Like when you look at Liberty Alliance and they declare all the bills, why are they telling you all the bills that are good for freedom? If you have to babysit your rep, that's going to be democracy, because the people don't swear to uphold the Constitution. The rep does. So the only issue at hand is not what bill they're voting on. The only issue at hand is the one that is representing you, does that one understand liberty and freedom? And are they fierce to make sure it's not being infringed upon? So you don't have to spend your time looking at all the bills. You say like, look, I got Gronski in there, and that guy will eat people. But that's the guy that you can sleep. Why have a representative form of government? So the purpose of a representative form of government is so that you can pursue your happiness. And if we share that load, that as a duty, then you can spend most of your time pursuing happiness. If you have fierce statesmen, if you will, in the legislature that actually understand and know how to secure rights. So that's the only issue, is whether your rep is going to secure your rights, because then you can relax. And then if I need you to step in or do something, I'll say that. And that's the way that you are vigilant to stand watch, like you're standing watch on a fence. If you've ever been in the military, the responsibility of standing watch is fierce. You can sleep if you know that there's a watch being taken to see the enemy afar off or what have you. They'll call people to order. But without a good representative, you don't have that. So why does the rep have to do anything if you're going to be doing it all? It's not a representative form of government. So these states have this power. And now where did they get it from? The people of those colonies coming together saying, this is what we want. And these people were masters at the idea of a good government, if you will. And like the founder said, it only works for religious or moral people. Immoral people cannot be in community where people are self-governing. Because you have to have a standard of some sort of excellence that is holding people to a standard that represents liberty and freedom. And self-government is the foundation of a free society. Without it, it doesn't work. So when we talk about states, when we use the word state, we use the word country. If you think America's a country or a nation, you may be a federalist. If you think America is a country, you may think Europe's a country. How many people here think Europe's a country? You know, the country of Europe. You know, I mean, what would it be? Well, how would you think if those Europeans are out there saying, you know, God bless Europe, land that I love. You know, I mean, would that be weird? They don't do that at soccer matches. They don't all stand there singing, Europe, Europe, Europe. I mean, it's like Americans are not very smart when it comes to what they have. And listen, the federal government's been excellent at facilitating federalism. I support Hillsdale College, which is one of the only colleges that reject federal money, okay? But they're doing a course on the Federalists. And if you've never read the Anti-Federalists, those are the ones that were not in support of creating the central government, because they already had one. So the papers of the Federalists and Anti-Federalists are important to read so that you can understand what's good or what's not good about the forming of our union. So I stopped being a union guy, it was actually after George W., his second term. After they signed for the Patriot Act, I was like, okay, it's not going to work. But, Republicans are doing this. Even like, what's his name, Jeb Clueless Bradley. He's a Republican, if you will. I remember being a part of the Republican dinner one time. And they're all up there, bitching and complaining about Democrats. I'm like, what the hell? Stop. We don't have to complain about Democrats. Listen, the crap is in the room. The Republicans are not upholding the Constitution. They're looking for their own kinder, gentler military industrial power crap, big time law enforcement crap. You don't have a clue. That's the breakdown. And I remember talking to Jeb Brown. I said, why did you vote for the Patriot Act? Well, how is that constitutional? And he was like, when he was off on the side, and I'm talking to him, he's like, what? I did that? It was like, holy moly, you're a United States senator? That's crazy. Nobody gets on behind the microphone. He's like, he's sharper than a tack. He knows exactly what he's doing. But on the side, he's not too bright. He's an enemy of liberty and freedom. That's who he's about. And then he takes leadership power here in New Hampshire. He's not a good, good nut. He's not a good apple. But that's because the standard is, these two parties are part of that erosion. But when we talk about these states, they are countries. Why? They have a legislature, they have an executive branch, they have a State Department. All of the states are members of the Hague Convention as free and independent states. One of the best ways that we can get New Hampshire to help us is to have New Hampshire kick the feds out. When I was talking about Joe Kenney, I asked him, I said, how much of our budget is supported by the federal government? Now, how much money does the federal government have? Anybody know? Yeah, no, less than zero. $32 trillion in debt. So what are we getting from the feds? Nothing. We're getting debt from the feds. So, and he said it, and I don't remember, I should call him back again, but it's like 40% of our budget is the feds. It's like, how irresponsible is that? So we don't have to exit the union. How about we exit the money? And you're never going to exit the union while you're on the government tit. It's never going to happen. And the problem is that it's not so much that the legislature can be responsible. Why is the New Hampshire legislature not responsible? The reason they're not responsible is because the people aren't responsible. I help people eliminate their income tax liability, but you won't believe how many freedom-minded people are saying, will I get my Social Security? So how's that working for you? I want my welfare. I paid into it. No, have you ever read the 1935 Social Security Act? No. You don't know what the hell you're doing. That's how irresponsible people are. I paid in. Did you know you had a choice? No. Why? Because I'm just tumbling along, but I love liberty and freedom. That's just typical. But they won't. They'll say, I like to get rid of my income tax liability, but I don't want to give up that cookie. And it's about minimum wage. But it's figured into the budget to buy votes. It's just bad. So do you think that we were telling the people in New Hampshire, we're going to eliminate the federal debt? The problem with that is that you're going to see that New Hampshire has to be responsible for everything. Now you're going to see if you want it or not. And you know what? I think one of the best ways to tax the people, if you will, is my suggestion, if I was a state rep, is that I would just set up GoFundMe accounts. Hey, we want to build this building over here. We have a good credit rating. We're going to borrow from the bankers, and we're going to take on debt. Now, what's wrong with government having debt? Because that'd be a bill that I would immediately launch, is the government not able to borrow money act. That'd be great. Wouldn't that be great? You know why borrowing money is immoral? Because all of us old people are like, yeah, we want that building. We want it really, really nice. And you old people are on limited income. Do you want to pay for it? No, let's fuck the children of the future. That's how we'll do it. Because we love the children so much, let's have them. You know what they call that? Taxation without representation. Because those children, do they get to say, no way, I'm going to go homeschool. I don't want to build a building. This is ridiculous. But that's taxation without representation, is to borrow money. It's immoral. It's just bad. So the idea of, if New Hampshire cannot financially pull out and take care of itself, I promise you we're not going to shoot anybody to leave the union. It's never going to happen. But here's the thing, 1/50 of our union could, if they pulled away, that would be a powerful act. It would be a nonviolent act. It would be a responsible act. Because if you don't like mommy and daddy telling you what time to go to bed, move out and buy your own place. How many, remember that when you were growing up? You don't like it living here? There's the door, buddy. Hit the road, Jack. I remember my first car. I was like, I could live in my car. That was not so bad, I don't know where I'd park it, but, I could live in it. And you get your first apartment and you have to answer that key question when you're buying beer. Do I want quality or quantity? Quantity. Yes, we'll buy more cheap beer. Carlton Black Label, $1.89 a six-pack. All those days. Anyway, New Hampshire's got, these are different countries. Now, I used to have on here Canada, but Canada's not a country either. It's also a union of a sort of separate countries. And these centralized governments want you to think that they have all the propaganda to have them say, we're a country. And even people in our freedom stuff where they say they want to refer to themselves as Americans, stop calling yourselves Americans. I'm a New Hampshire citizen. I'm a Pennsylvanian by birth, okay? That's my nationality is, oh no, insufficient data for this? What the heck's that? Help, I'm under attack. Okay, let's see. How do you escape that? Let's see here. Let's go back.
You broke it, I'm telling.
I know. Geez, there we go. Let's go back to the full screen. Okay. What? How's that working? All right. We have the Articles of Confederation. And again, this was when they formed the Union, they formed a confederation. And this is amazing. The style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America, not the United States. It's the United States of America. Just so you know, when I talk about the tax code and all, the name of the federal government is the United States, not the United States of America. And if you don't get that term correctly, you won't understand what you're agreeing to. But it's America. USA is the short phrase for that. Then Article 2 says, each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right which is not by this confederation expressly delegated to the United States, that's the federal government, in Congress assembled. Article 3. The said states hereby severally enter into a firm league of friendship with each other for their common defense, the security of their liberties, and the mutual and general welfare, binding themselves, see, it's not being forced on, binding themselves to assist each other against all force offered to or a tax made upon them or any of them on account of religion, sovereignty, trade, or any other pretense whatever. Then goes on to say, here's Article 4. To secure, and then goes to secure and perpetuate mutual friendship and intercourse among the people of the different states of this union. Now see, that's a good government, when you're promoting intercourse among the different people of the states. We should have more intercourse, don't you think? No, it's talk, right? Intercourse is to talk. To secure and perpetuate mutual friendship and intercourse among the people of the different states in this union, the free inhabitants of each of these states shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of free citizens in the several states. And the people of each state shall be free ingress, to come in, and regress to and from any other state, and shall enjoy therein all the privileges of trade, commerce, subject to the same duties and impositions and restrictions as the inhabitants thereof. They wouldn't be taxing each other, whatever their citizens are dealing with. There would be this mutual beauty. Isn't that lovely? So when, in the name of the Commerce Act, the federal, the Commerce Act between the states, the federal government regulates. This is regulation. See, they've changed the word regulate. When we talk about a government regulating, it has to be like your bowels, nice and easy and smooth. They're to help it not to be constipated. But if they're the sphincter between the states, that's bad. Okay? Because they now regulate, because they use the word control, and then they tax and do all these things. That's not the way that the Articles of Confederation is set up. And that's not really the way that the Constitution was set up. But that's the way it's been. And why is that? Because we don't teach people original intent. We don't teach children how to secure liberty and freedom. We have an ignorant people. That's a fact and a reality. Not like the way they used to look at American people as being fiercely intelligent about government, and certainly morally how to self-govern, which you can see how that's happening in the world. So the Articles of Confederation was our original union. With this beauty, why would you want to form another form of government? But that's what James Madison did. Let's go to that guy. Now here is from the U.S. Government Styles Manual. Notice what it says here. It says here in number 523, in designating the natives of the states, the following forms will be used. Notice it's under the topic of nationalities. Listen, these states are nations, my friends. I didn't make it up. They've always been nations. They've always been freedom-minded. I mean, in the sense of how they were set up. So I'm a Pennsylvanian by birth because this is nativity. It's a nation. Okay, I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. What's the chance of that? So I'm a Pennsylvanian. I'll always be Pennsylvanian by birth, even though I choose my citizenship, which is New Hampshire. I'm not a New Hampshireite. My son is a New Hampshireite. He was born at home in Barrington, New Hampshire. So I'll never be a New Hampshireite. That's nativity. But see, that's what New Hampshire, people that are born in New Hampshire are called New Hampshireites. We know Californians, Alaskans, these are all terms that we don't use. Now they want to know what color you are and what racial thing you are or some other dynamic that's not really what you are. You should never ever be agreeing that what color of your skin is, as if that's relevant. Or even what your beliefs are or whatnot. It's not relevant. But this is how the Styles Manual. Now when we do passport processes for state citizens to get passports, we say that our nationality is not United States of America. United States of America, America is not a nation, folks. There's no body of law that's saying America, it's a union, just like Europe's a union. You don't have Italians out there saying, no, I'm a European, I'm not Italian. They'll never do that. You'll never get Germans saying, oh yeah, I'm a European. They're European, but that's not something that they're bragging about, okay? They love that free and independent states in Europe. And that's the way it should be in America. When California is going to be irresponsible and fall off the financial map, do you want to be bailing out that welfare state? Or Illinois or New York or some other liberal state that wants to hand out welfare to everybody? No. But the feds are going to bail out, and then they're going to share all that crap with the taxing the hell out of the American people. We're going to wrap up here. So In the Constitution, Article 4, Section 2 makes reference to state citizens. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens of the several states. And then the federal government creates their citizen by the 14th Amendment. We're going to talk about that in the other talk across the way. So here's a fun fact. Do you know that there are two types of citizens in the United States? One has an income tax liability and the other does not. So, and I'll talk about that in the talk at the exit lounge. You may not realize that when you're filling out forms and you're answering questions, you may be agreeing to things that you really don't want to agree to. And that's the way we've helped Americans worldwide eliminate their income tax liability, because we fill out paperwork proper. None of our clients, I've been doing this for over 25 years, or Dave Ridley over there did one of our first videos when I was in Wolfboro, or as he said, Wolfboro. But anyway, but yeah, that's one of my oldest videos online. I've been doing this for a long time. None of our clients are having trouble with IRS. It's very easy to deal with IRS. Usually the difficulty you'll have is with the party that you may be working with. They think they're in the federal zone, and so they're being motivated by fear and ignorance, okay? And so we help you learn how to navigate that space, how to have proper paperwork, so that you can keep all of your living, 100% of your labor. And if you don't have a federal income tax liability, you wouldn't have a state income tax liability either. So anyway, that's what I want to share. We're wrapping up here, and we got about 7 minutes. So if you have any questions, this is just an overview of the Declaration of Independence.
Well, it's a beautiful presentation. I just wanted to comment first that the Declaration of Independence, I've been through my whole life with, brainwashing public schools. We never studied the document in the detail that you presented it this morning.
It's beautiful.
But it's very empowering and very morally elevated. So my next question is more personal. I'm a New Yorker,
Okay.
but I live in Canada.
So you were born in New York,
I'm born in New York, and
you live in Canada now.
I live in Canada, generate all my income there,
Mhm.
and I file and pay taxes in Canada. The taxes are very oppressive, as you probably know. I don't file, I'm required to file the IRS, I'm required to declare my bank accounts. I'll do no such thing. I don't do that. So my question is, do you deal with these type of clients?
Oh yeah, all over the world. A U.S. citizen, that's a 14th Amendment citizen, has a tax liability all over the world. You're supposed to file and declare the money that you make in Canada as a U.S. federal citizen. But maybe you're not a U.S. federal citizen. Maybe if you could see from the tax code that the word United States is the District of Columbia, and you don't live or work, or maybe you don't want to be a citizen of the District of Columbia. Maybe you want to be a citizen of that last place. Where was the last place you had a driver's license from in the States? Was it New York?
Florida.
Florida? So you still are a Florida state citizen, okay? That's the last place that you have your habitation domicile. Because listen, that's where you have representation in Congress. That's where you would vote. That last place you would vote would be there. That's where you would be on a jury. Now you're residing in Canada, but your habitation domicile is still Florida, because you haven't separated that. That's just still sitting there. Courts determine habitation domicile as that place you intend to return to. It doesn't say when, because people join the military for 35 years. That place they left is exactly where they go back. That's their last habitation domicile. Residency is transient. So they're Americans all over the world. They still have representation in the Congress at that last place that they've been. And so that's what we do. But I would change your status so that you don't have to deal with the federal government. And when Canada wants to tax you on some level, they have treaties with the U.S., and so they tax also federal citizens sometimes. So maybe if you're a citizen of your state, you may not have a tax liability, or there'll be no reporting from Canada to the U.S. because you're not a federal citizen.
I'm not so concerned about it, but I'm more concerned about Canada too. The taxes are quite oppressive there.
Why do you stay there other than visit?
Because I just established there. And,
Okay, well, that's your choice.
Kids are there, I can't just. But I am looking at alternative residences.
How about China? Would you want to live there?
No.
Okay, I just wondered which communist country you want to live in.
It is
I'll live in Russia, because I don't think. I mean, can you imagine being a cop in Russia that pulls you over and you're just like, I have rights. Okay. It was like no one cares about that. So, but I'm saying it's like it's your choice. And a lot of times people will make like a difficult choice. I have no choice. That's just irresponsible. you do make choices of convenience and the least, evil and all that stuff, but they still are choices. And look, make good choices. Live somewhere that is going to be a blessing. Promote liberty and freedom worldwide with places that, like join Lieberland. But look, you can travel anywhere, but, choose your habitation domicile properly so that that's where and what you are. So, any other questions?
Well, one just follow-up question.
Yeah, sure.
Is there a guy like you in Canada that can,
There are freedom-minded people. Yeah, I mean, in every one of your
They
states,
can do
there's
what you
there's
do.
freedom communities, and some are knowledgeable or not, because sometimes people just complain, and they're empowered by complaining. But yeah, there's a freedom movement. I would believe in every state or country's got a freedom movement. But set up on Facebook and looking for freedom people and qualify, go out to dinner, meet them, and hook up with them, because it does help build your faith and your knowledge when you're hanging out and associating with other freedom people. I have people in Canada that we say, look, what is it? What's the state right above us? They want to be separate. They speak French. What is it?
Quebec.
Quebec.
It's a
Yeah, they
province.
recognize their sovereignty. They don't want to be
Yeah.
compelled by their union, but people give away their power a lot. Any other questions? If you have more questions about this stuff, you can also join us over there. I'm going to walk over and set up my laptop. I got 2 minutes to get over there. What is your question?
About 5 years ago, I inherited $160,000 from my aunt.
That's lovely. How much
Except
did
that
you
the
get to keep?
IRS said, inheritance tax, you owe us $26,000.
Again, your choice, yes. You didn't know
Is
you
that
had a
true?
choice. Absolutely. You had a choice. Listen, when you don't have an income tax liability, you're not doing capital gains. When you sell your house, you don't have a timeline to buy another one and all that stuff. You're not participating in any of that. You don't have to do KYC the way they're looking for federal citizens that have tax liability. Why, if you're going to have a great big crypto return, are you going to want to share some of that with the pedophiles in DC? You don't want to do that. All right, I'll be over there. I love you all. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
My biggest fear